In my opinion, the success or failure of this vehicle, the 2016 Buick Envision two-row crossover, really rests on one key question. Is Buick a premium or luxury brand? Now, with an as-tested price on the sticker of just under $43,000, this is by no means cheap. However, within the realm of premium or luxury crossovers, it represents a decent value. So that's really the question. Now, I'm Greg Kavanaugh, and this is my amateur car review channel, Gallup Journey Test Drives. Thanks for finding me. If you're new to my channel, I get these vehicles on loan from my local dealerships, and I drive them for several days in real world situations with my kids and groceries and all those kind of normal everyday things. And therefore, I hope to present you with an honest, unscripted, but a real world accurate review that you can use. So thanks for finding me. Stick around. Let's get started. Now, if you're asking yourself, what's the Buick Envision? I don't blame you. This thing was launched with very little fanfare, and it's relatively obscure at this point. So let me get you up to speed. In Buick's lineup, when it comes to crossovers, you have the Enclave on top and the small Encore on the bottom. Nothing in between in terms of two-row, mid-size crossovers. Now, this has been selling like hotcakes in China, so they figured it already starts with an E. Why not bring it over here and slot it in between? So roughly, it sits between those two in terms of size and price. Now, it's a little bit closer, in my opinion, in size to the Encore than the Enclave. Now, generally speaking, yes, it's a mid-size two-row crossover, but that segment has become fairly blurred. It's really roughly the same size as a Toyota RAV4, but also a Ford Edge or even a Volvo XC60. And actually, looking at their numbers, what I realized is they all have roughly the same length, around 183 to 185 or so, but different wheelbases, with the Ford being the largest and then the RAV4 being the smallest. So it gives you a little bit of perspective. Now, when driving it around, I will say, I've spent a fair amount of time in the Ford Edge and the RAV4, and this vehicle feels smaller than the Ford Edge in terms of driving it around. It just doesn't feel quite as big. The Ford Edge has fairly high shoulder lines and so forth, but it's also a little bit narrower and it feels that way as well. But it's by no means cramped. Compared to the RAV4, it feels somewhat similar in size, although definitely more premium in terms of feel. Now, it's fair to say when it comes to the styling of two-row crossovers, they all kind of just blur together. I will openly admit that. There's only so much you could do, and frankly, yeah, they all do look fairly similar, unless they're really overtly styled or aggressively styled, which generally speaking, I think makes them look like they're trying too hard. So let's give Buick a fair shake in that regard. Now, when it comes to the styling here, I kind of erred on my wife for an overall impression of how to describe it, mostly because she doesn't really care about cars at all, probably about as much as I care about football, for those of you who know me. So when I asked her, what's your impression of this vehicle? She's like, oh, that's a nice looking car. And I knew what she meant. She meant that it seems to be a little more premium. It seems to represent a slightly higher or next tier up vehicle. And it's sharp and it's kind of classy without looking like it's trying too hard or trying to be too sporty or aggressive. And I would say that's what Buick's been going for. Now, they've been trying to shed this brand image of being an old man's car. I don't know if the Envision really helps that, moves them away from that like their commercials are trying to show, but definitely this vehicle gives the impression of premiumness when you see it. The waterfall grille up front definitely stands out and lets you know right away it's a Buick if you know your cars. The par for the course now, aggressive headlights look good. I'm going to complain about this the same way I have in pretty much all of my Buick videos. It still has these portholes up top here in an homage to the old Buicks, which are not even functional and I think look just pretty silly. On the side, there's some nice creasing and some good lines. In the back, you get kind of this nice lip coming off, kind of spoiler action up top, which gives it a little bit of flair. But overall, it's not going to offend anybody, but it's a relatively handsome looking vehicle. Let me know in the comments if you agree. Now, here in the back, when it comes to cargo capacity, you're getting what's pretty much par for the course these days when it comes to two-row crossovers. You can see here this is a regular full-size piece of luggage, and the way I have it set up here with the second row seats not reclining majorly, just kind of in a nice comfortable position, you could get 3, maybe even 4 of them across. So as a family vehicle, if you need to take your whole family to the airport, I think it'll work. Camping cooler and so forth, full-size camping cooler would fit fine as well. Underneath here, as is normal these days, you do get storage over the spare tire. What's nice is that they did a really good job with these really lightweight foam organizing trays, and they're quite deep. So there's a good bit of storage here. Now what's most interesting is that they moved the fuel tank from underneath the second row to really underneath the first row. It's kind of straddling the all-wheel drive shaft there. And in so doing, what they've done is they've allowed the second row seats to kind of collapse as you fold them to get closer to a flat load floor when you put them down. There's some nice handles back here that allow you to put the seats down right from the back. They're not power, but they don't need to be. And then when you fold them down, they click all the way down, and it looks like that. It's not completely flat by any means. It's definitely not a minivan, but compared to some other crossovers on the market, you get less of that kind of cant upwards, and therefore it makes the space a lot more usable. Was it worth moving the entire gas tank just to do it? I'm not sure, but it is kind of a cool feature. So I wanted to point out an interesting feature here. Like many vehicles today, this one uses a smart key, but what I like that Buick has done is they put a lock and unlock button on all of the doors, and it's an actual button. A lot of the smart keys I use, they have like a little spot where you're supposed to touch it, it locks or unlocks, Toyotas especially, and I usually get frustrated with them. I don't know, maybe it just, after you use it day to day, it solves it, but I've been using them quite a bit, and I still don't get that comfortable with them. Here you get an actual button. Wow, who would expect it today that an actual button could make things better? And you can unlock and lock all the doors from here when you have the key in your pocket. Pretty nice. Now when it comes to second row space, I have to say, I'm quite impressed. I don't know if it's because this Buick was designed for the Chinese market, where supposedly they're being driven around all the time or not, so they put emphasis on second row space. But it doesn't matter because it's quite good back here. In fact, if you're looking at a vehicle like this because you're going to regularly drive around with 4 people, and if those people back here are older kids or other family members or adult friends or whatever, and you need that extra second row space, it's definitely worth checking out simply for that reason. It's got great toe room. I mean, I barely even hit the seat in front of me. Leg room is great. Knee room, of course, is great. It's not particularly wide, so 3 abreast is not going to be as comfortable as some other crossovers on the market, so it's worth checking that out. It does move fore and aft, which allows you to increase cargo space in the back. When you do that, you are going to end up with a little bit of space between the cargo floor and the seat here, which is kind of odd. I don't know, some vehicles have something that folds down to kind of make up that gap so you don't have stuff falling in there, but you can increase cargo space when you need to. And most importantly, these do recline fore and aft. It's not excessive. There are some other vehicles that recline a good bit more than this, but this definitely makes it quite comfortable. Now, when you factor in nice big windows here, it's not a high belt line, so you get good sight lines, so it's not claustrophobic. 2 good sized vents. These actually come standard with heated seats back here, as well as your own temperature and fan control, a couple of USB outlets and so forth. This is a pretty great place to be. So if you need second row space for people, check out the Envision because it's quite good. Out here on the open road, the first thing you need to understand is that there's no real trader aspect to its driving dynamics that dominates its character or the way it is when it comes to powertrain, ride and handling, and so forth. It's just all around, I would say, competent. Let's talk powertrain. Now this is GM's, fairly ubiquitous 2-liter Ecotec direct injected single turbo. And it's got a 6-speed automatic. I have used this powertrain in so many different setups that I'm used to it by now. But I have to say it works really well here in the Envision as well. It makes 252 horsepower at 5,500 RPM, but more importantly, it makes 260 pound-feet of torque at a pretty low 2,000 RPM. And it's that low torque peak that really gives this thing the tug that it kind of needs to not feel underpowered. So it moves around quite smartly. It's interesting how cars today have just become all around quite good. I mean, this thing's not quick, but it's by no means slow. And 15 years ago, this thing would have been actually pretty fast. So the powertrain here, I like it. It's going to return you 20 in the city, 26 on the highway, and 22 combined. And keep in mind, this is all-wheel drive. Those are pretty good numbers for a mid-size two-row crossover, pretty par for the course. Now, in terms of ride and handling and comfort, I'm going to say it is not old-school Buick mushy and wallowy, but it's by no means sporty either. It's fairly neutral, I guess is what I'd call it. It's well damped, it rides well. It's not super smooth. You do feel bumps and stuff, and these are 18-inch wheels. So there are some kind of harder impacts, even with this wheel size. It's not particularly sporty in the handling either, on-ramps and all those kinds of things. But overall, it's pretty well controlled, and it rides in the way you would expect a vehicle to do now, especially a premium vehicle. So I have no complaints there. It's generally just what you'd expect and what you need. Now let's talk interior. I have to say, Buick is continuing to up their game when it comes to interiors, and I really like this one. It's almost kind of BMW-ish. I don't know what about it makes me think that, but it just has kind of almost a BMW feel to it in terms of its aesthetics. It's got this really awesome kind of wood grainy, I don't know what it's actually supposed to be, but it's like this wood grain panel across the front here that goes onto the doors as well. It's really attractive. The dash is pretty low and far forward. It's not like really overwhelming. Kind of gets out of the way, and you have good sight lines going forward and out the sides. And it just makes it for a pretty inviting place to be. Real comfortable, really soft leather that I like with nice stitching. Pretty much everything you touch is pretty soft in here in the way it should be. So I like that a lot about it entirely. In terms of ergonomics, everything is easy to reach, nice infotainment package, and heated seats, front and rear. In fact, let's talk about those heated seats because it's part of the overall package. So to kind of summarize, I guess we need to say it like this. In my opinion, Buick is a premium or near premium, sometimes it's called, brand. To me, it competes with Acuras and probably Volvos. And maybe it doesn't quite have the cachet of those brands. I think it's approaching it. So let's compare it to something like a Volvo XC60. I think with the Volvo XC60, you're gonna get a little more panache, if you will, because you're driving a Volvo and not a Buick, just because it's not domestic, it's Swedish, and it's a little bit different, but it's also more expensive. It's a good bit compared to this, probably 5 to 6 grand more. This one stickers for 43. This is the premium. Now, you can get a premium too as well. What you do need to understand though about the premium is it comes with a lot of standard things. So for instance, it's got heated seats front and rear, as well as a heated steering wheel. It's got a ton of safety technology. Lane departure is really cool. You start drifting across and it pulls you back into your lane unless you have your blinker on. It'll vibrate the seat in different positions, different spots in the seat to let you know what's behind you as you're backing up, or if someone's got a blind spot, or if someone's coming, you're backing out of your driveway and someone's coming down the street, it'll buzz. It's a really cool feature. It's got a lot of tech and a lot of standard amenities that you're not going to get in other vehicles without having to get them as options. And then here's the good news. For 2016, you can have a premium or a premium 2. Those are the only trim levels offered. However, for 2017, Buick is introducing 3 new trim levels below the premium and the premium 2. The first one I think is just called Envision. Think of it as a base, and it's going to start like at 32 or 34, I think. And then you're going to move up to, I think it's called the Preferred, and then the Essence. All of those are under 40 grand. So if you wait a model year, you're going to be able to get this well under 40 if that's what you're looking for. And when you do that, suddenly you're getting a premium or near premium vehicle for a significant savings compared to the competition. And that's where I think Buick is going to do well with the Envision. So I want to give a big shout out to Rico Auto Complex of Gallup, New Mexico. Great guys down there. This is the only Envision they had, and they had on the showroom floor. They actually had to, open the big glass doors and get it out for me. I mean, I appreciate it. Check out their link in the description. And of course, I want to thank you guys for watching liking, subscribing, sharing. I mean, life's gotten quite busy for me. If you haven't noticed, it's been a while since I've uploaded. I've been busy. So your support really matters. I appreciate what you say. And of course, I'd love to read your comments. So I'll see you guys next time.